She didn't hesitate, didn't think, didn't even consider her own safety when she saw the truck explode on that empty stretch of highway. To most people driving by, it was just another traffic accident to avoid, another reason to be late for work. Another tragedy nobody wanted to witness. But when that leather-clad group roared up on their motorcycles, when those men with patched vests surrounded her, when they called her hero with voices thick with gratitude, everything changed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Because if she was just a random Good Samaritan, why did the most feared motorcycle club in America just make her an honorary member? The morning had started like any other in rural Nevada. Desert heat already shimmering above the asphalt at dawn. Long-haul truckers pushing through their final miles before rest. Tourists in rented RVs stopping for photos with cacti and roadside attractions. And on the stretch of Highway 95 just outside of Fallon, right across from the Dusty Boot, that weathered diner where truckers claimed they made the best apple pie this side of the Mississippi, stood a woman nobody noticed until she became impossible to ignore. Sarah Cooper. Nobody in Fallon knew much about her. Nobody thought to ask. Just another lean, weathered face beneath a faded baseball cap that had seen better days. Her pickup truck was different though. No flashy paint job, no oversized tires, just 7 words stenciled on the tailgate. Veteran owned. Respect earned. Service continues. Most drove past. A few, those who understood the meaning behind those words, would nod in silent acknowledgement when they saw her around town. Some whispered theories about her past that they'd never say to her face. One man in expensive suit, clearly not from these parts, the kind with Italian stitching that screamed corporate consultant, rolled his eyes at the gas station and muttered to his colleague loud enough to be heard. Another vet using their service as a personality trait. As if that makes them special out here. Sarah didn't react. Not even a flicker of response. Just stood still as stone, filling her thermos with coffee that would stay hot through the long drive ahead. The kind truckers relied on. The kind that fueled night shifts and overtime. Her movements were measured with the same precision you see in people who've had to perform under extreme pressure. Her boots, scuffed but polished at the toes, were still laced in that distinctive cross pattern only military personnel seemed to appreciate. And her eyes, damn, those eyes didn't belong to someone who'd lost their purpose. They were alert, scanning, registering everything. Inside the Dusty Boot, the owner, 50-something with leathery skin earned from decades in the Nevada sun, watched through the window as Sarah paid for her coffee and headed back to her truck. That Cooper woman's something else, she said to the cook. This burly former rodeo rider with forearms covered in faded tattoos. Comes through every Tuesday, never says more than 10 words, tips better than the tourists. Military for sure, but something more. The cook nodded, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. Heard she did 3 tours, Afghanistan, special ops maybe, though she doesn't talk about it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah settled into her truck, placing the thermos in the cup holder custom fitted to her dashboard. The early morning sun caught on something metallic around her neck, dog tags, worn smooth at the edges from years of constant contact with skin. She checked her mirrors, adjusted her cap, and pulled onto the highway heading north. Just another day hauling specialized equipment for a private contractor. The kind of job that paid well because the hours were long and the cargo sensitive. 3 miles up the road, she spotted it first. A thin trail of smoke coming from a semi that had veered half off the road. Most people would have slowed, maybe called it in, then continued their day. But Sarah Cooper didn't hesitate. Her truck was pulled over and hazards blinking before most drivers would have even registered what they were seeing. She moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing the fire extinguisher mounted behind her seat and the emergency medical kit sheet. Assembled herself, not your standard roadside package, but something more comprehensive. Something prepared by someone who'd seen what human bodies look like when they break. The smoke was thickening now, black and oily against the clear desert sky. The truck had jackknifed, its trailer listing dangerously to one side. The cab crushed against a rock formation. Even from 50 yards away, Sarah could see the flames licking at the undercarriage. Time was measured in seconds now, not minutes. She didn't run. Running creates panic, wastes energy, leads to mistakes, but moved with deliberate speed, scanning for hazards, assessing risks with each step. The heat hit her first, then the smell. Diesel fuel and burning rubber, a combination she knew too well from convoys that never made it home. Through the cracked windshield, she saw him. Male, mid-40s, bloodied but conscious, pinned behind the steering wheel. His eyes met hers, wide with fear but also recognition, not of her specifically, but of what she represented. Help, hope, a fighting chance. Fuel lines ruptured, Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the crackling flames. We've got maybe 2 minutes before this goes up. Can you move your legs? The man's voice was strained, accent thick with pain and something European. No, something's broken, crushed. He coughed, and blood speckled his lips. Leave me. It's too dangerous. Sarah almost smiled, as if danger was something she hadn't danced with before. Not how I operate, she replied, already working on the jammed door. The metal had buckled, frame twisted from impact. She wedged herself against it, muscles straining, and felt the familiar burn across her shoulder blades, an old injury from her final tour. A permanent souvenir from a mission gone sideways. The door gave with a screech of protesting metal. The heat inside the cab was suffocating, flames already climbing up the dashboard. Sarah didn't hesitate. She reached across the man, hands moving with surgical precision to release his seatbelt and assess the damage. His legs were trapped beneath the collapsed steering column, but not crushed beyond saving. This is going to hurt, she warned, bracing herself against the seat. But staying hurts more. With a single powerful movement, she leveraged the column up just enough, pain shooting white-hot through her old injury, and pulled the man sideways through the gap. His scream tore through the desert air, but Sarah didn't flinch. Pain meant living. Silence meant something worse. She half carried, half dragged him away from the truck, his arms slung over her shoulders, her body taking most of his weight. They made it 30 yards before her combat instincts kicked in. Down! She commanded, turning to shield his body with hers, just as the fuel tank ignited. The explosion sent a fireball into the clear Nevada sky, debris raining down around them like deadly hail. A piece of metal sliced across Sarah's exposed forearm, but she barely registered it. Injury assessment came later. Survival came first. Once the initial blast subsided, she maneuvered the man farther from the wreckage, propping him against a boulder. Now, with momentary safety established, she switched modes, from rescuer to medic. Her hands moved methodically, checking vitals, assessing injuries, prioritizing treatment. Broken tibia, possibly fibula too, she muttered, more to herself than to him. 3 broken ribs. Possible pneumothorax. She pressed her fingers gently against his chest, feeling for the telltale sensation of air where it shouldn't be. Laceration on your scalp. Burns on right arm, 1st and 2nd degree. The man watched her with growing bewilderment. You're military? He managed between labored breaths. Was, Sarah replied, tearing open gauze packets with her teeth. Force Recon, Marine Corps, now I just drive trucks. She said it without looking up, focused on stabilizing his leg with makeshift splints fashioned from emergency kit supplies. Not just drive trucks, he countered, wincing as she tightened the bandage. You just walked into fire. For a stranger. Sarah finally met his eyes, something flickering in her gaze. Not pride, not dismissal, but simple certainty. Would have done it for anyone. Some things you don't leave behind. In the distance, sirens wailed. Someone else had called it in. Help was coming, but Sarah knew rural response times. Out here, minutes stretched like hours, and she'd seen too many people lost in those precious intervals. She wasn't leaving until proper medical assistance arrived. She continued working, monitoring his breathing, checking pupils, keeping him conscious with questions. Name? Victor, he replied, his accent more pronounced through the pain. Viktor Kovalev. Originally from? Ukraine. But American now. 15 years. He coughed again, less blood this time. Good sign. You saved my life. Sarah shrugged. Just happened to be here. Victor's laugh turned into a grimace. No coincidences. My father always said this. His hand moved to his chest, and for the first time, Sarah noticed the heavy silver ring on his finger, a skull with wings. Something clicked into place in her mind. The custom bike parts in his trailer she'd glimpsed before the explosion. The tattoos visible beneath his torn sleeve. The distinctive vest partially hidden under his jacket. You're with the angels, she said. Not a question. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing her reaction. Problem? Sarah's expression didn't change. Not for me. I've known worse men in better uniforms. She pressed a clean compress against the cut on his forehead. And better men in no uniforms at all. Something like respect flickered across Victor's face. Before he could respond, the wail of sirens grew louder. An ambulance appeared on the horizon, followed by state troopers and fire trucks. Sarah continued working until paramedics took over, giving them a precise, clinical rundown of Victor's injuries and the treatments she'd administered. Only when they had him stabilized on a gurney did she step back, suddenly aware of the blood drying on her own arm, the burn of smoke in her lungs, the renewed ache across her shoulder blades. A paramedic tried to examine her, but she waved him off. I'm fine. Focus on him. As they loaded Victor into the ambulance, he called out to her. Your name? I need to know. Sarah Cooper, she replied, already turning back toward her truck. We will meet again, Sarah Cooper, Victor called, his voice stronger now. This debt will not be forgotten. Sarah didn't respond, just nodded once before walking away. She'd heard promises before. In her experience, they evaporated like morning dew under the harsh sun of reality. She had deliveries to make, deadlines to meet. Life continued its march forward, unconcerned with roadside dramas and near-death experiences. Back in her truck, she examined the cut on her arm. Deep enough to need stitches, but nothing life-threatening. She'd had worse shaving her legs. From the glove compartment, she pulled out a suture kit, not standard issue for civilian vehicles. But Sarah Cooper wasn't standard issue herself. With practiced movements, she cleaned, numbed, and stitched the wound closed, her face betraying no pain beyond a slight tightening around the eyes. She called her contractor, explained the delay with clinical detachment, arranged a new delivery window. No drama, no heroics mentioned. Just logistics and solutions. Then she pulled back onto the highway, leaving the still smoldering wreckage behind. Another incident filed away in a mind that had catalogued far worse. What Sarah didn't see was the motorcyclist who had stopped on a distant ridge, watching the entire scene through high-powered binoculars. He observed her rescue, her treatment of Victor, her self-administered medical care, and her departure. Without a word, he pulled out a phone and made a call, speaking in low, measured tones before tucking the phone away and starting his engine. 3 days later, Sarah was back at the Dusty Boot, sipping coffee at the counter, scanning the local newspaper with half interest. Her arm throbbed beneath a clean bandage, But she'd endured worse pain without the luxury of diner coffee and air conditioning. The bell above the door jangled, and the diner fell silent. Sarah felt it before she saw it, that shift in energy when something unexpected enters a room. She didn't turn immediately, just watched the reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser as 5 men entered. Leather cuts with distinctive patches. Heavy boots that didn't hurry for anyone. The smell of open roads and unfiltered cigarettes. The diner patrons stared, conversations frozen mid-sentence. The owner behind the counter stiffened, hand drifting toward the phone. Everyone knew who the Hells Angels were, what they represented in the American consciousness. Freedom to some, fear to most. The leader, a mountain of a man with a silver beard and hands like sledgehammers, scanned the diner until his eyes landed on Sarah. Without hesitation, he walked directly to her, his brothers flanking him like an honor guard. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough for conversation, far enough to show respect. "Sarah Cooper?" His voice was gravel and whiskey, worn smooth by years of road dust and bar fights. Sarah turned slowly, one hand casually dropping to her side where a concealed knife was always within reach. Old habits. Depends who's asking. The big man's face remained impassive for a moment, then cracked into a weathered smile. "I'm asking on behalf of Viktor Kovalev. Our brother. The man you pulled from that burning truck when everyone else just drove on by." Sarah said nothing, just held his gaze with the steady patience of someone who had learned that words often revealed more than they concealed. "My name is Marcus," the big man continued. "I'm the president of the Nevada chapter." He gestured to the men behind him. "We came to say thank you. And to settle a debt." Sarah shook her head slightly. "No debt to settle. I did what anyone would do." Marcus laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "That's where you're wrong, Marine. Most people don't walk into fire for strangers. Most people don't know how to treat a pneumothorax on the side of the road. Most people don't stitch their own wounds and make their delivery deadlines." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. "You've been checking up on me." "We look after our own," Marcus replied simply. "And anyone who saves one of us becomes one of us in a way." Sarah tensed, decades of combat instinct kicking in as she assessed the 5 men surrounding her. Not as threats, not yet, but as variables in a situation that had suddenly grown complex. The diner remained silent, other patrons frozen between fear and fascination. This wasn't the kind of town where the angels stop for coffee. "I appreciate the sentiment," Sarah said carefully, "but I don't need anything in return. Anyone with my training would have done the same." Marcus shook his head slowly, the movement deliberate as everything else about him. "See, that's where you're wrong again, Cooper. We checked with Victor's doctors. Without your immediate response, without your field medical skills, he would have bled out before the ambulance arrived. The paramedics confirmed it." Sarah absorbed this without visible reaction, though something shifted behind her eyes. In Afghanistan, success and failure had always been measured in the stark arithmetic of lives saved versus lives lost. After her discharge, that clarity had evaporated, leaving her adrift in a civilian world where victory was nebulous and purpose even more so. "Victor is more than just a member," continued Marcus, his voice dropping lower. "He's our mechanic, our brother, and for 3 of us, he's the reason we made it home from Desert Storm with our sanity intact." He gestured to the other men, who nodded in solemn agreement. "You didn't just save a biker. You saved a cornerstone of our family." The owner of the dusty boot approached hesitantly, coffee pot trembling slightly in her hand. "Everything all right here, Sarah?" Her voice quavered, but there was steel beneath it, the protective instinct of someone who considered Sarah, if not a friend, then at least a familiar fixture worth defending. "Everything's fine, Maggie," Sarah replied, her eyes never leaving Marcus. "These gentlemen were just leaving." Marcus's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Actually, we came to offer you a job." This caught Sarah off guard, though she revealed it only with a slight tilt of her head. "I have a job. Hauling equipment for FedCorp?" Marcus countered. "Minimum benefits, maximum hours, and a boss who nearly wrote you up for missing that delivery after saving Victor?" "Yeah, we know about that too." Sarah's jaw tightened imperceptibly. It was true. Her supervisor had been more concerned about the cargo than the fact she'd sustained injuries requiring stitches. The corporate world's priorities never ceased to disappoint her. "What kind of job?" she asked, curiosity overriding caution. Marcus gestured toward the door. "Not the kind we discuss in public, but it uses your skills. All of them. And it pays triple what you're making now." Sarah considered this. In her experience, offers that sounded too good always were. "And what would I be hauling for the Angels? Because I don't transport anything illegal." That's a hard line. The bikers exchanged glances, and one of them, younger than the others, with intelligent eyes that didn't match his rough exterior, stepped forward. "Not hauling, Miss Cooper. Security consulting. My name's Deacon. I handle our legitimate business interests. We own 5 custom motorcycle shops across 3 states, plus a parts manufacturing facility. We've had security issues recently." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "The Hells Angels can't handle their own security?" Marcus's expression darkened. "We can handle direct threats. But this is different. Sophisticated. Professional. 3 break-ins in 2 months. Nothing obvious taken, but inventory missing when we do counts. Electronics tampered with. And 2 weeks ago, a fire at our Henderson shop that didn't start accidentally." Deacon nodded. "We need someone who thinks differently. Someone with military intelligence background." Sarah's expression revealed nothing, but her mind was racing. "What makes you think I have that kind of background?" "The way you move," Marcus said simply. "The way you assessed Victor's injuries like you were reading a checklist. The way you're sitting right now, back to the wall, clear sightline to all entrances, 3 potential weapons within reach." He nodded toward her coffee mug, steak knife, and the heavy metal napkin dispenser. Sarah didn't confirm or deny it. Her service record was technically public information, but the specifics of her deployments remained classified. "And if I say no? Then we thank you for saving our brother, leave a generous tip for your coffee, and you never see us again," Marcus replied. He reached into his cut and pulled out a business card. Simple black text on white stock. "But if you're interested, come by this address tomorrow. See what we're dealing with. Then decide." Sarah took the card, examining it carefully before tucking it into her pocket. "I'll think about it." Marcus nodded once, then turned to leave. The others followed, but the youngest, Deacon, lingered for a moment. "For what it's worth, Miss Cooper, we're not what the media makes us out to be. Not entirely, anyway." His voice was educated, lacking the rough edges of the others. "Victor told us how you said you've known worse men in better uniforms. We've all seen that truth firsthand." With that, he joined his brothers. The bell jangled again, and they were gone, leaving only the rumble of motorcycles and a diner full of wide-eyed patrons. Maggie approached cautiously, refilling Sarah's coffee without being asked. "You okay, hon?" she asked, concern evident in her lined face. Sarah nodded, her mind still processing. "Just fine." "Those men," Maggie hesitated. "They're dangerous folks to get mixed up with." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground her in the present. "Danger's relative, Maggie. Sometimes the real threat wears a suit and tie and calls you sweetheart while signing your paychecks." That evening, Sarah sat in her small rental house on the outskirts of Fallon, the business card propped against a lamp on her kitchen table. 3 hours of online research had yielded predictable results: official reports of criminal activity, journalistic exposes on organized crime connections, and the club's own carefully cultivated image of brotherhood and rebellion. None of it told her what she needed to know. In Afghanistan, she'd learned that official reports rarely captured the ground truth. People were complex, organizations even more so. The Marines had taught her how to fight, but intelligence work had taught her how to see beneath surfaces, how to distinguish signal from noise. She picked up her phone and called the one person who might have insight beyond what search engines could provide. Cooper. The voice that answered was gruff, weathered by years of command decisions and military-grade whiskey. Colonel James Blackwood, retired, her former commanding officer and the closest thing to a father figure she had left. "Sir, it's Sarah Cooper." The gruffness softened, almost imperceptibly. "Cooper, been a while. You still hauling cargo through the desert?" "For now," Sarah replied. "I need some intel, sir." "Off the record." "When has anything between us ever been on the record, Cooper?" A chuckle, then the sound of a chair creaking as he settled in. "What do you need?" "Hell's Angels. Nevada chapter." "What's your read?" Silence stretched for several seconds. Interesting question from someone who keeps her head down. "What's your involvement?" Sarah explained briefly, the accident Victor, the job offer. Blackwood listened without interruption, a habit formed over decades of battlefield command. "Could be legitimate," he said finally. "The Angels have been diversifying, going legitimate in parts of their operation. Custom bikes, merchandise, even security consulting." A pause. "But they're still the Angels, Cooper. Still have connections that run deep in worlds you might not want to touch." "I'm not naive, sir." "Never said you were. But after what happened in Kandahar..." He trailed off, knowing he didn't need to finish the thought. They both remembered Kandahar. The mission. The betrayal. The names added to memorial walls back home. "This isn't Kandahar," Sarah said quietly. "And I need more than a delivery job if I'm going to stay sane." Blackwood sighed, a sound heavy with understanding. "Your call, Cooper. You always had good instincts. Just remember, men like these, they operate by different rules. Make sure you know what game you're playing before you ante up." "Understood, sir." "And Cooper?" His voice took on the commanding tone she remembered from briefings. "Check in regularly. If I don't hear from you every 72 hours, I'm assuming something's wrong." Sarah smiled despite herself. Once a commander, always a commander. "Yes, sir." After ending the call, she made her decision. Not because she trusted the Angels. Trust was a luxury she rarely afforded anyone, but because stagnation was slowly killing her. Routine deliveries and empty evenings weren't enough to silence the ghosts that followed her home from war. Maybe this was just trading one kind of danger for another, but at least it was movement. At least it was something. The next morning, Sarah drove to the address on the card. It led her to a large industrial building on the outskirts of Reno, the kind of anonymous metal structure that could house anything from a tech startup to a meth lab. The only distinguishing feature was the row of motorcycles parked out front, not just any bikes, but custom machines that spoke of craftsmanship and obsessive attention to detail. Sarah parked her truck and approached cautiously, noting security cameras, reinforced doors, and tinted windows. Professional setup, not the haphazard security she might have expected from a motorcycle club. That aligned with Marcus's claim of sophisticated threats. Before she could knock, the door opened. Deacon stood there, no leather cut today. Just jeans and a button-down shirt with rolled sleeves revealing tattoos that looked more like art than gang symbols. "Miss Cooper," he nodded. "Wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I," Sarah replied honestly. "Show me what I'm dealing with." Inside, the building opened into a sprawling workshop space. The scent of metal, oil, and leather filled the air. A dozen or more men worked at various stations, welding, machining, assembling. Custom motorcycle frames in various stages of completion hung from racks, and parts were organized with military precision. "This is our main fabrication facility," Deacon explained, leading her through. "We design and build custom parts here that supply all our shops. Some of the components are proprietary. Took Victor years to perfect the engineering." Sarah noted the pride in his voice. This wasn't just a front for illegal activities. There was genuine craftsmanship happening here. Men nodded respectfully as they passed, many sporting the distinctive Angels patches, others looking like ordinary skilled mechanics. "Through here," Deacon continued, leading her to a secure door at the back. He punched a code into a keypad, and the heavy door swung open to reveal an office space. Marcus sat behind a desk, papers spread before him. 2 other men from yesterday stood nearby, along with a woman Sarah hadn't seen before, early 30s, sharp eyes. With the focused intensity Sarah recognized from intelligence officers she'd worked with. "Sarah Cooper," Marcus acknowledged, standing. "This is our inner circle. You've met Deacon, our business manager. That's Bear and Timber," he nodded to the 2 men. "And this is Natalie, our operations coordinator." The woman extended her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Ex-Army intelligence," she said without preamble. "Afghanistan, 2012 to 2015. Sarah assessed her quickly. "Marines. Force recon, multiple deployments." A flicker of respect crossed Natalie's face. "Thought so. Not many civilians can do what you did for Victor." Marcus gestured to a chair. "Have a seat, Cooper. Let's talk specifics." For the next hour, they laid out the situation. Someone was systematically targeting their legitimate operations. Break-ins, data theft, sabotaged as accidents. Professional jobs, minimal evidence left behind. "At first we thought it was rival clubs," Bear explained, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man his size. "But they don't operate this way. Too clean, too precise. Corporate espionage is more likely," Deacon added. "We've developed some innovative engineering solutions. Our custom fuel injection system alone is worth millions if someone could replicate it." Sarah studied the security footage they showed her, grainy images of black-clad figures moving with tactical precision through darkened workshops. "These aren't amateurs," she confirmed. "They move like pros. Military or private security background." "That's what I said," Natalie nodded. "But I can't pin down who's behind it." Marcus leaned forward. "This is where you come in, Cooper. We need someone who can think like them. Anticipate their moves. Help us secure our operations without bringing in outside security firms we can't trust." Sarah considered this. "And why trust me? You barely know me." "Victor trusts you," Timber spoke for the first time, his voice accented like Victor's. "You had his life in your hands and gave it back to him. That matters to us. Besides," Marcus added with a grim smile, "we've vetted you more thoroughly than you might think. Honorable discharge, distinguished service, specialized training in counterintelligence. You're exactly what we need." Sarah tensed. "How did you access my service record?" "We have friends in various places," Marcus replied simply. "Nothing illegal, if that's what you're worried about. Just people who owe us favors." Sarah wasn't entirely convinced, but she let it slide for now. "What exactly would my role be?" "Security consultant, officially," Deacon explained. "You'd assess our vulnerabilities, design new protocols, train our people. Unofficially, you'd help us identify who's targeting us and why." "And if we find them?" Sarah asked, her eyes fixed on Marcus. "What happens then?" The room fell silent. It was the question that would determine everything, whether this was truly a legitimate security job or something darker. Marcus met her gaze unflinchingly. "Then we take the evidence to the authorities. We've worked too hard to legitimize our business operations to throw it all away on revenge. That's why we need someone like you, someone who understands both worlds but respects the law." Sarah studied his face, looking for tells, for the micro-expressions that would betray deception. She'd interrogated hardened fighters in Afghanistan, stared down warlords and corrupt officials. Marcus was either telling the truth, or he was a better liar than most professional intelligence officers. "I have conditions," she said finally. "I work independently. I report directly to you, not through a chain. I have access to everything: records, security footage, personnel files. And if at any point I find evidence of illegal activity beyond what we're investigating, I walk away. No questions, no consequences." Marcus considered this, then nodded slowly. "Agreed. With one addition, your safety is our priority. Where we go, trouble sometimes follows, even when we're not looking for it. You accept our protection when necessary." Sarah almost laughed at that. "I can protect myself." "No doubt," Marcus replied, "but there's safety in numbers. That's something else the military taught both of us, I suspect." He had a point. Sarah had survived Afghanistan not just because of her skills, but because of her unit, men and women who watched her back when she couldn't. Since returning home, she'd been operating solo, relying only on herself. It was exhausting in ways she rarely admitted. "When do I start?" she asked. "Right now," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the desk. "These are the blueprints for all 5 of our locations. Start with a vulnerability assessment. Natalie will get you set up with access credentials and show you around." As the meeting dispersed, Deacon approached her. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "this means a lot to the club. Victor's not just our mechanic, he's the heart of what we do here. What you did for him, it changed things." Sarah nodded, unsure how to respond to the sincerity in his voice. In Afghanistan, saving lives had been part of the mission. Here, in the civilian world, it had created connections she hadn't anticipated, hadn't even considered when she pulled over on that highway. As Natalie led her through the facility, introducing her to key personnel and explaining security systems, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since before her discharge: a sense of purpose, of being needed for skills that mattered. It wasn't the adrenaline rush of combat or the clear objectives of a military operation, but it was something solid, something real. By evening, she had compiled initial security assessments for 2 locations and identified several vulnerabilities that needed immediate attention. As she prepared to leave, Marcus approached her again. "You've got a sharp eye, Cooper," he said, reviewing her notes. "Spotted things our previous security consultant missed entirely." "Your previous consultant was looking for conventional threats," Sarah replied. "These aren't conventional attackers." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Stay for dinner. The club always eats together on Thursdays. Tradition." Sarah hesitated. Dinner meant social interaction, personal connections, the very thing she'd avoided since returning to civilian life. Easier to keep people at a distance, to limit relationships to professional exchanges and polite nods at the dusty boot. "Another time," she said finally. "I need to review these blueprints tonight." Marcus didn't push. "Fair enough. But the invitation stands. We take care of our own, Cooper. Whether you realize it yet or not, that includes you now." As Sarah drove back to Fallon that night, the desert stretching endlessly around her, she considered his words. Our own. For years that had meant her unit, her fellow Marines. After discharge, it had meant no one. She'd become an island, self-sufficient but isolated. Now, unexpectedly, she found herself connected to a world she never would have chosen, a motorcycle club with a complicated history and an uncertain future. All because she'd stopped to help a stranger on a burning highway. Life's strange geometry, she thought. How a single decision, made in an instant, could alter your trajectory completely. For better or worse remained to be seen, but for the first time in years, Sarah Cooper was moving forward instead of standing still. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. 3 weeks into her new role, Sarah sat in the security office of the Angel's main facility, surrounded by monitors displaying camera feeds from all 5 locations. She'd transformed the space from a basic surveillance setup to a comprehensive security nerve center. Multiple screens tracked movement patterns, entry logs, and anomaly alerts based on algorithms she'd designed herself. The morning had begun with a security briefing, her 4th with the club's leadership. What had started as skepticism from some members had evolved into respect as they saw her systems catching vulnerabilities their previous measures had missed. Even the old-timers who initially viewed her as an outsider now nodded in acknowledgement when she entered a room. Sarah sipped her coffee, black, no sugar, just like in the field, and studied the footage from last night. Something had triggered a motion alert at the Henderson shop around 2:17 a.m., but the cameras showed nothing obvious. Most security consultants would have dismissed it as a false positive, perhaps a stray cat or desert wind rattling a loose door. Sarah Cooper wasn't most security consultants. "Find anything?" Natalie's voice came from the doorway. In the past weeks, they'd developed a solid working relationship built on mutual respect and shared military experience. Different branches, different roles, but the same understanding of duty and precision. "Maybe," Sarah replied, not looking away from the screen. "Watch this shadow movement here." She pointed to a barely perceptible shift in the darkness near the loading dock. "It's too deliberate for wildlife, too patient for a random trespasser." Natalie leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Could be nothing." "Could be," Sarah agreed. "But I don't believe in coincidences." 3 weeks, no incidents. We upgrade security, and suddenly we get a probe. They're testing our new measures. "I'll send Bear and Timber to check it out," Natalie offered, reaching for her phone. Sarah shook her head. "No, if I'm right, they're watching for reactions. Let's not show our hand yet." She tapped a few keys, adjusting camera angles. "I've added invisible trip lines to the security system. Digital only, nothing physically detectable. Next time they cross those boundaries, we'll know exactly where they are without alerting them." Natalie studied her with newfound appreciation. "That's not standard civilian security protocol." "No," Sarah agreed, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "It's not." The door opened again, and Deacon entered, holding a thick folder. "Morning, ladies." "Got those financial records you asked for, Sarah." Sarah accepted the folder, quickly scanning its contents: supplier contracts, parts inventories, shipping manifests. She'd requested these not because she suspected internal theft, but because external targeting often followed money trails. Understanding what was valuable helped predict what might be targeted next. "Thanks. Anything unusual in the quarterly reports?" Deacon shrugged. "Not that I can see. Revenue's up 12% across all shops. Parts division is showing 18% growth year over year. Victor's new exhaust system is selling faster than we can manufacture it." Sarah's attention sharpened. "The prototype for that system, where is it kept?" "R&D room at the Reno shop." "Why?" "Just connecting dots," Sarah murmured, making a note. "Has anyone approached the club about buying the design? Competitors, manufacturers, investors?" Deacon exchanged a glance with Natalie. "Actually, yes. Cycletech Industries made an offer last month. Pretty substantial, too. Marcus turned them down, said Victor's innovations belong to the club." Sarah nodded, adding another note. "I need everything you have on Cycletech. Ownership structure, executive team, security contractors they use." "You think they're behind the break-ins?" Natalie asked, her posture shifting subtly into the alert stance of a soldier sensing a threat. "It's a lead worth following," Sarah replied carefully. "Corporate espionage happens more often than most people realize, especially when patents and proprietary technology are involved." Deacon frowned. "I'll pull the files, but Cycletech is massive. They supply parts to major manufacturers worldwide. Would they really risk their reputation targeting us? Size doesn't guarantee ethics, Sarah said, her voice hardening slightly. Sometimes it just means better resources to cover your tracks. She'd seen it in Afghanistan, massive contractors whose public humanitarian efforts masked darker operations. The uniform changed, but human nature remained consistent. As Deacon left to gather the requested information, Natalie lingered. "There's something else you should know," she said, lowering her voice. "Victor's being released from rehab today. Marcus is bringing him back to the clubhouse this afternoon." Sarah nodded, processing this development. Though she'd saved Victor's life, she hadn't actually spoken to him since that day on the highway. His injuries had required extensive rehabilitation, multiple surgeries for his legs, physical therapy, pain management. The club had visited him religiously, but Sarah had kept her distance, focusing instead on securing their operations. "Will he be resuming his duties?" she asked, keeping her tone professional. "Limited capacity at first," Natalie replied. "But yes, he's been asking about you, you know. Wants to thank you properly." Sarah dismissed this with a slight wave. "Not necessary. I was just doing what anyone would have done," Natalie finished for her, a knowing smile crossing her face. "That's what you always say. But we both know that's not true. Most people would have called 911 and kept driving. You ran toward fire and pulled out a stranger." Before Sarah could respond, an alert pinged on her main monitor. She turned immediately, professional focus replacing personal discomfort. "Motion detection at the Carson City location," she reported, fingers flying across the keyboard to bring up the relevant feeds. "Loading dock, similar pattern to Henderson." Natalie moved beside her, instantly alert. "Coincidence?" "Definitely not," Sarah confirmed, eyes locked on the screen where a shadow moved with tactical precision around the building's blind spots. "They're probing multiple locations simultaneously. Testing response times." She reached for her phone, dialing Marcus directly. "We have activity at 2 locations. Henderson and Carson City. Surveillance only so far, but it's coordinated." She listened briefly. "No, don't send anyone yet. Let them think they're undetected. I need to see their full pattern before we respond." After ending the call, she turned to Natalie. "I need to get to Carson City. It's closest, and I want eyes on this myself." "Not alone," Natalie countered firmly. "Club rules. Remember your agreement with Marcus." Sarah wanted to argue but knew it would waste valuable time. "Fine, you're with me. Let's move." 30 minutes later, they were parked in an unmarked vehicle 2 blocks from the Carson City shop, watching through high-powered binoculars. Sarah had positioned them downwind in a location that offered clear sight lines without exposing their presence. Old habits from reconnaissance missions that had kept her alive in hostile territory. "There," she whispered, gesturing slightly to a commercial van parked across from the shop. "Fake utility markings, no company name, tinted windows. That's them." Natalie followed her gaze. "How can you be sure?" "Position is too perfect. Clear view of both entrances. They've been here before, scouting the optimal surveillance point." Sarah continued scanning methodically. "And there's condensation on the passenger window. Someone's inside, has been for hours." Impressed, Natalie nodded. "What's the play?" Sarah considered their options. Direct confrontation would reveal their awareness but might scare off the larger operation. Passive observation would yield intelligence but allow the surveillance to continue unchallenged. "We watch for now," she decided. "I want to see who exits that van, how they move, what equipment they're carrying. It'll tell us who we're dealing with, private security, corporate espionage, or something else entirely." They settled in for surveillance, a familiar routine for both women despite the years since their active service. The discipline of waiting, watching, noting details that others would miss. It was a skill set that didn't fade with time. 3 hours passed. Sarah remained motionless, her focus unwavering. Natalie rotated between watching the van and monitoring communications from the other shops. The sun climbed higher, baking the Nevada landscape, but neither woman complained about the heat. "Movement," Sarah said suddenly, voice low. "Driver's side door." A man emerged from the van, average height, athletic build, nondescript clothing that wouldn't draw attention. But Sarah noticed the details others wouldn't, the way he scanned his surroundings in a precise, 180-degree sweep, the slight bulge of a concealed weapon under his light jacket, the communications earpiece nearly invisible behind his ear. "Professional," she murmured. "Military background, possibly special operations based on his movement pattern." The man walked casually toward a coffee shop across from the Angels facility, but his path gave him clear views of all access points. Classic reconnaissance behavior, establishing visibility while maintaining a natural presence. "Take his photo," Sarah instructed. "I want to run facial recognition when we get back." Natalie used a specialized camera with a telephoto lens, capturing several clear images without using flash. "Got him. Should we follow?" Sarah considered this, then shook her head. "Too risky. He'll have counter-surveillance training." Her phone vibrated with an incoming call. "Marcus. Cooper," she answered. "Victor's back," Marcus said without preamble. "And we've got a situation at the Reno shop. Someone tripped the new silent alarms in the R&D section. Happening right now." Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The other locations were diversions, she realized aloud. "Keep your people back. We're on our way." As they drove back toward Reno at top speed, Natalie glanced at Sarah. "You think they knew we'd be watching the other locations?" "It's what I would have done," Sarah confirmed grimly. "Create distractions, draw security resources away from the real target." "Which means they knew about our new security measures," Natalie added, connecting the dots. "We have a leak." Sarah nodded, hands tight on the steering wheel. "Someone with inside knowledge of our upgrades. Someone who knew exactly when to strike." They reached the Reno facility in record time, approaching cautiously from the service entrance. Sarah had designed the new security system with multiple redundancies. Even if the primary systems were compromised, secondary measures would continue tracking any intrusion. Inside, they found Marcus, Bear, and several other members gathered in the security room, watching live feeds from the R&D section. On screen, 2 figures in dark tactical gear were methodically photographing Victor's prototype designs and downloading data from the specialized computers. "How did they get past the outer perimeter?" Sarah demanded, quickly assessing the breach points. "Professional job," Marcus replied grimly. "Cut power to the main grid, but our backup generators kicked in as designed. They bypassed the door sensors using manufacturing override codes." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Those codes are restricted. Only club leadership and section heads have access." The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone trusted had betrayed them. "What's the play?" Bear asked, his massive hands clenched into fists. "We go in hard, catch them in the act." Sarah studied the feed, noting the intruder's equipment and movements. "No, they're too professional. They'll have contingencies, possibly armed backup nearby." She turned to Marcus. "I have a better idea. Let's give them what they want, but on our terms." She quickly outlined her plan. Instead of confronting the thieves directly, they would allow them to take the data, but not before Sarah modified it with subtle flaws that would render the designs unusable. Meanwhile, they would place trackers on the intruder's vehicle to follow them back to whoever had ordered the theft. "That's cold," Bear said with newfound respect. "Let them think they won, then follow them home." "Exactly," Sarah nodded. We need to identify who's behind this, not just catch the foot soldiers. Marcus considered the plan, then nodded his approval. Do it. Sarah moved quickly, accessing the main server through a separate terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, implementing changes to the design files that would appear intact but contain fatal engineering flaws. Next, she activated the microscopic trackers she'd installed throughout the facility, technology she'd brought from her military days that few civilians even knew existed. They're finishing up, Natalie reported, watching the feed. Heading out through the service corridor. Let them go, Sarah instructed. Bear, get 3 men ready to follow at a distance once we have their direction. Natalie, monitor the tracker signals. I want continuous updates on their movement. As the team mobilized, Marcus studied Sarah with newfound appreciation. You've done this before. It wasn't a question. Different context, same principles, she replied simply. In Afghanistan, she'd tracked insurgent networks using similar methods, allowing lower-level operatives to lead them to command centers. The enemy had changed, but the tactical approach remained effective. Within minutes, the intruders had exited the building and returned to a waiting vehicle, an unmarked SUV with tinted windows and commercial plates. Bear and 2 other members prepared to follow at a safe distance, while Sarah and Natalie monitored the tracking signals from the security room. They're heading east on I-80, Natalie reported, watching the blinking dot on her tablet. Maintaining highway speed, no evasive maneuvers. They don't know they're being tracked. Sarah nodded, satisfied with the operation so far. But part of her remained troubled by the implications of an inside source. Trust was a rare commodity in her world, and betrayal from within struck at the foundation of any organization. The security room door opened, and Deacon entered, supporting a man on crutches, Viktor Kovalev. He looked thinner than Sarah remembered, his face marked by healing scars, but his eyes were alert and focused. When he saw Sarah, he stopped, straightening as much as his injured body allowed. Sarah Cooper, he said, his accented voice filled with emotion. The woman who walked through fire for me. The room fell silent, all eyes shifting between them. Sarah, uncomfortable with the attention, simply nodded in acknowledgement. Mr. Kovalev, good to see you recovering. Viktor shook his head slightly. Such formality from the person who held my life in her hands. He moved forward, waving off Deacon's assistance. In my country, when someone saves your life, they become family. More binding than blood. Sarah remained still, unsure how to respond to such raw gratitude. In Afghanistan, saving lives had been part of the mission, not something that required acknowledgement. Civilian expressions of thankfulness always left her feeling awkward, exposed. I was just doing my job, she said finally, defaulting to the familiar phrase. Viktor smiled, seeing through the deflection. And now you do a new job, protecting my brothers and our work. He glanced at the security monitors. Marcus tells me you've already caught our thieves. We're tracking them now, Sarah confirmed, grateful for the shift to operational matters. They took your designs, but I've modified the files. They'll look correct but fail catastrophically if manufactured. Viktor's expression hardened. Good, but who would target us this way? We have competitors, yes, but this. He gestured to the sophisticated breach displayed on the monitors. This is not normal business rivalry. That's what we're going to find out, Sarah assured him, turning back to the tracking display. The dot had left the highway, now moving through an industrial area on the outskirts of Sparks, a neighboring city. They've stopped, Natalie reported. Warehouse District, Lot 47 on Enterprise Way. Sarah accessed satellite imagery of the location, assessing the layout. Commercial property, multiple access points. Looks like a distribution center. Marcus moved closer, studying the image. Who owns it? Deacon was already searching property records on his tablet. Registered to Pinnacle Holdings, LLC. Let me trace the corporate structure. His brow furrowed as he dug deeper. It's a shell company, multiple layers of ownership, but his expression changed to surprise. The parent company is Cycletech Industries. Sarah's suspicions were confirmed. The same company that tried to buy Victor's designs. Victor's face darkened with anger. They tried to steal what they couldn't buy. We need evidence, Sarah cautioned. Solid proof that connects Cycletech leadership to the theft. The tracking data, Natalie began. Won't be enough in court, Sarah finished for her. We need more. Documentation, communications, direct links between the operatives and company executives. Marcus considered this challenge. So what's our next move? Sarah thought for a moment, weighing options against risks. We need someone inside that warehouse. Not to confront them, but to gather intelligence. Plant surveillance, access their systems, find the communication chain. I'll go, Bear volunteered immediately. Sarah shook her head. No offense, but subtlety isn't your strong suit. This requires someone who can move invisibly, someone with technical skills. She paused, knowing what needed to be said. It requires me. Marcus frowned. Too dangerous. We hired you as a security consultant, not an infiltration specialist. Sarah met his gaze steadily. That's exactly why I'm the right person for this. I have the training. In Afghanistan, I ran similar operations against higher stakes targets with better security. Victor studied her with newfound understanding. You were not just a Marine, were you? Force recon with specialized training, Sarah admitted. Part of a joint intelligence task force. This is what I was trained to do. A heavy silence fell over the room as the club members processed this revelation. Sarah had never fully disclosed her military background, sharing only what was necessary for her security role. Now, facing a sophisticated enemy, those specialized skills became their greatest asset. Marcus exchanged glances with Victor, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, he nodded. What do you need? A small team. 3 people maximum. Me, Natalie for communication support, and 1 club member who knows the business side well enough to identify valuable intelligence. Sarah laid out her requirements with practiced efficiency. Surveillance equipment, non-lethal defensive options only, and a solid extraction plan. Victor gestured to Deacon. He goes with you. Best business mind we have, and he can move quietly when needed. Deacon nodded his acceptance of the assignment, though concern flickered across his features. Sarah understood, infiltrating a corporate competitor's facility crossed lines that could have serious legal consequences if discovered. This wasn't motorcycle club rivalry. This was potential corporate espionage charges. We do this by the book, she emphasized. Gather evidence only. No confrontation, no property damage, nothing that can be traced back to the club. Marcus nodded in agreement. Clean operation. Intelligence only. As the room buzzed with preparation activity, Victor moved closer to Sarah, his crutches tapping softly on the concrete floor. You risk yourself again for people who were strangers to you weeks ago, he observed quietly. Why? Sarah considered her answer carefully. Since leaving the Marines, she had drifted, lacking the purpose and structure that had defined her life for so long. Hauling cargo through the desert had paid the bills but left a void where meaning should be. Because it matters, she said finally. Because what's happening here matters. Victor studied her face, seeing beyond her composed exterior to the warrior beneath. You were lost before, yes? Moving through life but not living in it. The observation struck closer to home than Sarah cared to admit. We all find our way eventually. Victor smiled knowingly. Sometimes the way finds us instead. On a highway, in fire and smoke. He rested a hand briefly on her shoulder, the gesture of a comrade rather than a grateful victim. Be careful tonight, Sarah Cooper. You saved my life once. I would not want to lose yours in return." As she prepared for the operation ahead, Sarah reflected on the strange path that had led her here. From the disciplined structure of the Marines to the isolation of civilian life, and now to this unexpected alliance with a motorcycle club fighting corporate theft. Not the future she would have predicted, but one that called on the skills and strengths that defined her. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single choice: to stop when others drive by, to walk toward danger when others retreat, to see value in people society has taught you to fear. Sarah Cooper had made that choice on a desert highway, not knowing it would lead her here. But as she checked her equipment with the same methodical precision she'd used in combat zones around the world, she realized she wouldn't have it any other way. Darkness cloaked the industrial complex like a familiar friend as Sarah moved silently along the perimeter fence. The weight of her tactical gear, lightweight and non-restrictive, felt like coming home, a sensation both comforting and troubling. How easily the body remembered what the mind tried to leave behind. "Perimeter sweep complete," she whispered into her communications device. 2 guards at the main entrance, 1 patrolling the east side. "Loading dock is clear." Natalie's voice responded in her earpiece, calm and precise. "Copy that. Security cameras on a 60-second rotation. You'll have a blind spot at the southwest corner in approximately 20 seconds. From the surveillance van parked 3 blocks away, Natalie coordinated their movements while monitoring security feeds they'd tapped into. Beside her, Deacon studied building schematics, identifying the most likely locations for valuable intelligence. "Blind spot active," Natalie confirmed. "Go now." Sarah moved with fluid efficiency, scaling the fence and dropping to the other side without a sound. Years of training had taught her body to distribute impact, to move with purpose but without noise. She pressed herself against the building's shadow, becoming part of the darkness. "I'm in," she reported. "Move into Access Point Alpha." Access Point Alpha, a maintenance entrance they'd identified from satellite imagery, was secured with an electronic keypad. Standard commercial security, nothing military grade. Sarah attached a small device to the keypad's housing, letting it run through combination sequences until the light flashed green. Inside, the warehouse air hung heavy with the scent of metal and machine oil. Shelving units stretched toward the ceiling, filled with motorcycle parts and manufacturing equipment. But Sarah wasn't interested in inventory. She moved deeper into the facility, toward the offices where information would be stored. "Second level, northeast corner," Deacon guided through her earpiece. "That's where they brought the stolen data." Sarah ascended a metal staircase, careful to distribute her weight to prevent creaking. At the top, a hallway stretched before her, lined with glass-walled offices. One door at the end stood out, solid wood with an additional security panel. "Target identified." "I've got eyes on the secure room," she whispered. "Keycard access plus PIN code." "Can you bypass it?" Natalie asked. Sarah studied the security panel. "Yes, but it'll take time. And there's a camera with direct line of sight." "I can loop the feed for 90 seconds, Natalie replied. "Any longer and the system might flag it as an anomaly." "I'll need 2 minutes minimum," Sarah calculated. "We need a distraction." Deacon's voice came through the comm. "On it." Triggering the loading dock alarm in 3, 2, 1. A shrill alarm blared from the opposite end of the facility. Sarah pressed herself into a shadowed alcove as security personnel rushed past, heading toward the disturbance. Perfect timing. "Camera looping now," Natalie confirmed. "You have 90 seconds. Sarah moved swiftly to the door, attaching her bypass device to the security panel. Unlike the exterior access, this system was more sophisticated, requiring both electronic manipulation and physical finesse. Her fingers worked with practiced precision, muscle memory taking over. The lock disengaged with a soft click, just as Natalie's voice returned. 15 seconds remaining on the loop. Sarah slipped inside, closing the door silently behind her. The room was dark except for the blue glow of computer monitors. 3 workstations, a server rack, and walls lined with technical drawings and prototype sketches. This was definitely their target. "I'm in," she reported. Beginning data collection. She inserted a specialized drive into the main computer, initiating a targeted search for files related to the Angel's stolen designs. The program, developed by military intelligence and certainly not available to civilians, bypassed security protocols while leaving no digital footprint. "Files identified," she murmured, watching as the drive extracted data. "Multiple correspondence between Cycletech executives and the team that breached our facility. Direct authorization from..." Her voice trailed off as a name appeared on screen. "Lawrence Decker, Cycletech CEO. That's our smoking gun," Deacon confirmed. The CEO himself authorized corporate espionage. Sarah continued searching, downloading evidence methodically. "There's more. They've done this before, targeted at least 3 other custom manufacturers in the past year. It's their business strategy. Buy if possible, steal if necessary." As the drive completed its extraction, Sarah turned her attention to the physical documents in the room. Photographs would provide additional evidence, especially of materials not stored digitally. She worked efficiently, capturing images of project plans, correspondence, and technical specifications. 2 minutes until security rotation changes, Natalie warned. "You need to move." Sarah finished her documentation and prepared to exit when something caught her eye, a familiar name on a project folder. She opened it quickly, scanning the contents. "They're not just after Victor's designs," she realized aloud. "They're planning to acquire the entire club operation. Hostile takeover through regulatory pressure." "What does that mean?" Deacon asked sharply. "It means they're going to use legal channels to force you to sell," Sarah explained, photographing the documents. "They've been building a case with law enforcement, providing evidence of illegal activities connected to the Angel's legitimate businesses." "That's insane," Deacon protested. "Our operations are clean." "The evidence doesn't have to be real," Sarah replied grimly. "Just convincing enough to trigger investigations, freeze assets, and create public pressure. Classic corporate warfare." The alarm at the loading dock finally silenced, meaning security would return to normal patterns soon. Sarah secured the room exactly as she'd found it and prepared to exit. "Extraction route clear," Natalie confirmed. "Security personnel still at the loading dock. Move now." Sarah slipped out of the office, retracing her path with the same silent efficiency. Within minutes, she had exited the building and scaled the perimeter fence, disappearing into the darkness beyond the property line. Back at the surveillance van, Natalie and Deacon received her with relief evident on their faces. "That was too close," Natalie said, helping Sarah remove her tactical gear. "Got what we needed, though," Sarah replied, handing over the data drive. "More than we expected." As they drove back to the Angel's clubhouse, Deacon reviewed the intelligence Sarah had gathered. His expression grew increasingly troubled. "This is sophisticated corporate sabotage. They're not just after our technology, they want to dismantle our entire operation. And they've gone to extraordinary lengths to make it happen," Sarah added. "Hiring ex-military contractors, fabricating evidence, planning coordinated legal actions. This goes beyond business competition. Why target us specifically?" Deacon wondered. "We're successful, but we're not exactly Fortune 500. Sarah had been pondering the same question. "It's personal somehow." This level of effort suggests motivation beyond profit. The clubhouse was fully illuminated when they arrived, despite the late hour. Inside, they found Marcus, Victor, and the rest of the leadership waiting anxiously for their report. Sarah connected the data drive to a secure laptop, displaying the evidence on a large screen. Cycletech CEO Lawrence Decker personally authorized the operation against you, she explained, pointing to the incriminating emails. They hired a private security firm called Aegis Solutions, primarily ex-military contractors, to steal your designs and gather intelligence on your operations. Marcus studied the evidence, his expression darkening. And this takeover plan? Sarah brought up the relevant documents. They're building a case to trigger federal investigations into your business practices. The goal is to create enough legal pressure and public scrutiny that selling to them becomes your only viable option. Victor, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Lawrence Decker, he repeated, the name clearly stirring something in his memory. I know this name. All eyes turned to him as he struggled to place the connection. Then recognition dawned in his eyes. 12 years ago, when I first came to America, I worked for a custom motorcycle shop in Arizona. The owner, Michael Reeves, was developing a revolutionary fuel injection system. Victor's voice grew stronger as the memories solidified. Decker worked for a parts manufacturer then. He offered to buy the technology, but Reeves refused. What happened? Sarah prompted, sensing the importance of this history. The shop burned down. Everything destroyed. Designs, prototypes, all of it. Reeves was inside. Victor's eyes hardened. They called it an accident, faulty wiring. But Michael was meticulous about his shop. I never believed it was an accident. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Decker had a history of eliminating competition by any means necessary. The fire at the Angels Henderson shop suddenly took on new significance. That's why he's targeting us now, Deacon realized. Victor's new designs are similar to what Reeves was developing. Decker recognizes the technology. And he's determined to own it this time, Marcus concluded. By any means necessary. Sarah considered their options. The evidence they'd gathered was substantial, but using it presented challenges. We have proof of corporate espionage and attempted sabotage, but taking this to authorities is complicated. Because we're the Hell's Angels, Bear said bluntly. No matter how legitimate our businesses are, the name comes with baggage. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Decker is counting on law enforcement's inherent bias against the club. It's part of his strategy. Victor leaned forward, determination evident despite his injuries. So what do we do? I will not let another innovator die for their work. Not again. Sarah had been formulating a plan since discovering the full extent of Decker's operation. It was risky, requiring precision timing and flawless execution, but it offered their best chance at neutralizing the threat while protecting the club's legitimate interests. We use Decker's playbook against him, she proposed. Corporate warfare, but on our terms. For the next hour, she outlined her strategy, a multi-pronged approach that would expose Decker's illegal activities while simultaneously protecting the Angels' businesses and innovations. It would require coordinated action across legal, media, and business fronts, leveraging the evidence they'd gathered without exposing how they'd obtained it. This isn't just about defending ourselves, she emphasized. It's about changing the narrative, transforming how people see the club and its businesses. Marcus studied the plan, appreciating its strategic depth. This goes beyond security consulting, Cooper. You're talking about reshaping our entire public image. Because that's what Decker is attacking, Sarah replied. Not just your technology, but your legitimacy. To win, we need to change the battlefield entirely. The room fell silent as the club leadership considered her proposal. Finally, Victor spoke, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had survived fire once before. I trust her, he said simply. She walked into flames for me when she didn't even know my name. I believe she can lead us through this fire as well. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. Sarah Cooper, who had arrived in their world by chance, was now guiding their future by choice. The next morning, Sarah stood beside Marcus in the conference room of one of Reno's most prestigious law firms. Across the table sat Lawrence Decker and his executive team, their expressions shifting from confident to concerned, as Marcus laid out precisely what they knew about Cycletech's illegal operations. "We have evidence of corporate espionage, attempted sabotage, and conspiracy to trigger fraudulent investigations," Marcus stated calmly, sliding a folder across the table. "All of it leading directly to you, Mr. Decker." Decker's face reddened as he flipped through the documents. "This is preposterous. You can't prove any of this." Sarah stepped forward then, her presence commanding despite her civilian attire. "Actually, we can. Emails with your digital signature authorizing the operation. Financial transfers to Aegis Solutions. Surveillance footage of their operatives accessing our facilities. And testimony from a former employee about similar tactics used against Michael Reeves 12 years ago." The color drained from Decker's face at the mention of Reeves. "You're bluffing." "We're not interested in destroying Cycletech," Sarah continued, ignoring his accusation. "Just stopping your illegal activities and ensuring fair competition in the industry." She outlined their terms: a binding agreement to cease all hostile actions, financial compensation for damages already caused, and a public statement acknowledging the Angels' legitimate business practices and innovations. "And if I refuse?" Decker challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. Sarah smiled slightly. "Then by noon tomorrow, this evidence goes to the FBI's Corporate Crimes Division, the SEC, and every major business publication in the country. Cycletech stock will collapse before market close." It wasn't an idle threat. Sarah had already prepared secure packages containing all the evidence, ready for delivery if negotiations failed. Decker was intelligent enough to recognize when he was outmaneuvered. After 3 hours of tense negotiation, he signed the agreement. Not out of moral awakening, but cold business calculation. The cost of fighting would far exceed the concessions required. As they left the law firm, Marcus turned to Sarah. "That was masterfully done. Where did you learn to negotiate like that?" "Afghanistan," she replied simply. "Some of our most important victories came without firing a shot. Finding leverage, understanding your opponent's vulnerabilities, it works in boardrooms as well as battlefields." Back at the clubhouse, they were greeted with celebration. News of their success had traveled fast, and the entire chapter had gathered to mark the victory. For the Angels, this wasn't just about protecting their businesses. It was validation of their journey toward legitimacy, proof that they could win on legal battlegrounds. Victor approached Sarah, moving more easily on his crutches now. "You have done what many thought impossible," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "You've given us a future beyond our past." Sarah accepted his gratitude with a slight nod, still uncomfortable with praise. "You built something worth protecting. I just helped secure it." As the celebration continued around them, Deacon joined them, handing Sarah a document. "The club voted unanimously this morning. We'd like to make your position permanent, head of security and strategic operations for all Angels businesses." Sarah stared at the contract, surprised by the unexpected offer. For years, she had drifted from job to job, using her skills, but never finding purpose that matched what she'd known in the Marines. This position would mean putting down roots, committing to something, and someone beyond herself. "You don't have to answer now," Victor added, sensing her hesitation. "But know this, what you've found here, this connection, it is rare. In my country, we have a saying, some families are made by blood, others by battle. You and I, we have both." His words resonated deeply. Since leaving the military, Sarah had avoided attachments, relationships, community, anything that might lead to the devastating loss she'd experienced in combat. But in protecting the Angels, she had found something she thought she'd left behind in Afghanistan: a unit, a mission, a purpose larger than herself. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Sarah stood alone in the workshop, studying the motorcycles in various stages of construction. Each represented countless hours of craftsmanship, innovation, and dedication, values she respected regardless of who embodied them. Marcus found her there, offering a cup of coffee as he joined her. "Penny for your thoughts, Cooper." "Just thinking about unexpected journeys," she replied, accepting the coffee. 3 months ago, I was hauling cargo through the desert, alone. Now you've helped save a motorcycle club's legitimate business enterprises from corporate takeover." Marcus finished with a slight smile. "Life takes strange turns." Sarah nodded, sipping her coffee thoughtfully. "When I left the Marines, I thought that part of my life, the purpose, the belonging, was over. I was just going through the motions, existing but not living. And now?" Marcus prompted gently. She considered the question carefully. "Now I'm remembering what it feels like to fight for something that matters. To use my skills for a purpose I believe in." She gestured to the contract in her pocket. "I'll take the position." Marcus nodded, unsurprised by her decision. "Victor said you would. He believes your paths crossed for a reason." Sarah had never been one for mystical thinking, preferring the concrete reality of cause and effect. But standing in this workshop, surrounded by the unexpected family she had found by running toward danger instead of away from it, she couldn't entirely dismiss the notion. Some journeys begin with a single choice: to stop on a desert highway, to help a stranger in flames, to see beyond labels and reputations to the humanity beneath. Sarah Cooper had made that choice without hesitation, not knowing it would lead her here. But now, looking back, she wouldn't have chosen differently. The road ahead would bring new challenges, new battles to fight. Cycle tech was neutralized, but other threats would emerge. The Angels' path to full legitimacy would face obstacles from those who couldn't see beyond their history. But for the first time since leaving Afghanistan, Sarah faced the future with something beyond resignation, with purpose, with community, with a mission worthy of her skills. "Some people spend their whole lives searching for where they belong," Marcus observed. "Others find it in the most unexpected places, often when they're not looking for it at all." Sarah nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Her journey had taken her from battlefields to highways, from isolation to unexpected brotherhood. And in saving Victor from those flames, she had ultimately found her own way forward, not despite her past, but because of it. Victor joined them, moving more confidently now as his recovery progressed. He carried something in his hands, a leather cut with the Angels' patches, but with a difference. Where most cuts bore standard membership identifiers, this one had a unique emblem, a phoenix rising from flames, with the words "Guardian Angel" beneath it. "For you," he said simply, offering it to Sarah. "Not full membership. We know that's not what you seek. But recognition of what you are to us now. A protector. Someone who walks through fire when others turn away." Sarah accepted the cut, running her fingers over the detailed embroidery. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. The phoenix reborn, stronger through fire. Like Victor, pulled from a burning truck. Like the Angels' businesses, emerging stronger from corporate sabotage. Like Sarah herself, finding new purpose in the ashes of her military career. She slipped it on, the weight settling comfortably on her shoulders. Not a uniform like those she'd worn before, but a symbol of belonging nonetheless. Different, unexpected, but no less meaningful. "Welcome home, Sarah Cooper," Victor said softly. And for the first time in years, those words rang true. Home wasn't a place, it was purpose, connection, the knowledge that your skills and sacrifices mattered. Sarah had found that again, not on a battlefield halfway around the world, but on a desert highway where she chose to stop when others drove by. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't charging into combat. It's opening yourself to new beginnings, new connections, new purposes when the old ones have ended. The true hero's journey isn't just about saving others, but finding yourself in the process. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.